First and foremost, just want to say thank you to my brother Seneca for this opportunity to add value to the students of this conference. And I'm really excited about this topic and this subject matter, especially after the type of year that we have had with COVID-19, with mental health issues on the rise. And mental health has been something that has been on the rise for quite some time, but we've seen just exponential growth of issues and anxieties and deep depression, especially amongst students, right? And I know exactly what that feels like. I'm someone who is a first generation high school graduate, first generation college graduate, but at the same time, I battled with mental health issues. I battled with identity crisis after I stopped playing basketball. I battled with suicidal ideations and all these different things. So this topic and this subject matter is near and dear to my heart, especially as I go out into these schools now and I'm speaking to students, and students are cutting themselves. Students are stressed out. Students don't feel like they have an outlet, right? And for me, I want to create this safe space within this environment here. So if you got a notebook with you, take that down, because this is going to be a really important conversation, something that could possibly change your life. I truly believe that. And I want to start by saying this, and I had to learn this, throughout my life's journey. And that is simply that your story is about you, but it's not for you, right? Your story is about you. Nate's story, my story is about me, but it's not for me, right? Okay, perfect, perfect. No feedback. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so let's get cooking, y'all. Look, your story is about you, but it's not for you. And for me, that takes the pressure off worrying day to day and allowing the stresses of life to hinder me and keep me down day to day, because I realize that my story is not about me. It's for me, right? Second thing, never let your emotions drive the car of your life. And what I mean by that is this: our emotions are poor drivers, right? Many students I come across, they don't have the emotional intelligence or the emotional fluency to make the best decisions that they can day in and day out. They allow their emotions to guide them, right? Let's think about it. You a student, especially when you get to that college age where nobody's coming to wake you up every morning, you don't necessarily feel like getting up to go to your 8 a.m. class, but you need to do it so you can go and pass that thing and get a good grade, right? So you can graduate. But a lot of times our feelings dictate what we do, right? So they drive the car. You never let your emotions drive the car of your life. And then also, you can't control the outcomes of your life, right? And this is something that blew my mind, where I really had to free myself. You can't control the outcomes, but you can control your thoughts. You can control your actions and how you respond to those outcomes, but you cannot control the outcomes, right? You can't control that. That's only up to God, what happens, right? But you can control today. You can focus on today. And when you're focusing on that present moment, that eases anxiety and it releases depression, right? A lot of people have anxiety because they're worried about tomorrow. Tomorrow isn't even here. Tomorrow doesn't exist. They're worried about next week, what might happen, what could happen, and it never happens, right? Or they're depressed about something that had already passed, in which they have no control over, something that they can't go back and change. They can't go back and shift whatsoever, right? But when you're focused on the present moment, when you can stay in the present as much as possible, it releases all of that. It releases all of that. And for me, I do a daily practice where I sit for 10 minutes and I focus literally on being still and being in that present moment. And that was a practice that my therapist had gave me, right? So we're going to dive a little bit into this, right? Most people, what I realized over the years, as I've been a mental health advocate, as I've been speaking over the past 5 years, as I've been going into schools and nonprofits and working for different places, most people aren't concerned about their wellness until their wellness is in jeopardy, right? Most people aren't concerned about their wellness until their wellness is in jeopardy, right? I think about my uncles and my dad and my grandpop and them. They would never go to the doctors, right? They despise the doctors. If something was hurting, it was what it was, right? If something was bothering them, they'll figure it out later. Instead of going to see what the issue was, they would never address it until it's in dire need of them looking to get a change, right? Until it was something that they definitely had to do, right? So most people aren't concerned about their wellness. They aren't concerned about those certain things, right? And for me, it took me a while to understand that my mental health mattered. And it also took me a while to understand the importance of resilience. and why I needed to understand it and why I needed to continue to build resilience, right? I didn't understand that as a kid. The environment that I grew up in, it didn't promote wellness. It didn't promote resilience. It didn't promote mental and emotional wellness at all, right? And at first, I wasn't choosing wellness. When I was in high school, when I was growing up, when I started to go, when I first went off to college, I wasn't choosing wellness, right? Honestly, I wasn't choosing me at all. That's the truth. I was not choosing Nate. I grew up with this old self love framework because of how I was raised, because of the trauma that I went through, because of the things that I've seen and that I faced. I grew up with this old self love framework of feeling unworthy. And I carried that all the way into my adult years of feeling unworthy, right? But you can never tell from the outside looking in. You can never tell. But I carried that from a child, right? I went to 9 different schools from first grade all the way up into high school. I went to 5 different colleges, 9 different schools, all the way from first grade to high school, y'all. And I didn't choose wellness at all. Instead, I chose fear. I chose running. I chose my insecurities. And what happens is those things that are internal, they become external and people can see them. At some point, they manifest, right, into something external. So the pain that I was going through on the inside, the trauma that I had, the things that I was trying to hide and bury and just sweep under the rug, eventually it started to seep out everywhere, right? And I had to get to a point where I decided that running from my insecurities was no longer serving me. It never served me, right? There's this quote that I learned when I was so I'm yoga certified as well in Baptiste yoga. And it was one thing we used to say during training. It was everywhere you go, there you are. I'm gonna repeat that. Everywhere you go, there you are. So I live in a community now. I'm down in Mays Landing, from the Pleasantville, Atlantic City area. A lot of people are familiar with Atlantic City in New Jersey. And a lot of the kids here, and I remember doing this when I was growing up, we want to make it out, especially if you play sports. You're playing sports just so you can make it out, right? And I remember us having that language. And it's like, when I really sat and thought about it, it's like, make it out to go where? Now, I'm not saying don't travel, don't go. I've done it all. I've been all around the country. I've lived in New Mexico. I lived in North Jersey. I lived down south. I've been all over the place. But it's so I can be a bridge back to my community with the things that I was learning. At first, my mindset was just like everybody else's. I'm trying to make it out. I'm trying to go, right? But not realizing, look, Nate, you can't outrun this pain. You can't outrun this trauma. Just because you're changing your environment on the outside doesn't mean anything's changing internally. And that's where the work has to take place. So that's why we say, everywhere you go, there you are, right? As a kid, right, I was molested at a young age. We're going to go deep into this. So some things may feel a little triggering and things like that. And if you need to pull back for a second to kind of just gather your thoughts, I promote that, right? Because I'm going to go deep into my story and why I'm so passionate about mental health, why I'm so passionate about emotional wealth and emotional health and emotional fluency and emotional wealth, right? Let's change that up, right? And I'm so passionate about breaking the stigmas around these things because I know what it did for my life. I know what it did for my family, right? So the mission for me is so much greater than me just coming to speak to try to come and inspire and motivate. That stuff's going to happen by osmosis. It's just going to happen. It's inevitable. But if I can open it up to a place where you feel comfortable, right? Getting the help that you need, where you feel comfortable having a conversation with someone else, where you feel comfortable being able to open up and be vulnerable. That's what this is all about because that's what I was missing, right? As a kid, young kid, I probably was, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years old. I was molested as a young kid by an older woman, which is interesting because I think about the men who were around me at the time, and this is the stuff they would applaud, right? They would applaud a younger guy fooling around with the older woman. Like that made you a man almost. But for me, that really damaged my view of women and of myself because it was something that I didn't necessarily want to happen. It was something that was very uncomfortable to me. But that happened multiple times as a kid. But also, I didn't feel comfortable enough to tell my mom or to tell my dad. It wasn't that open door policy for us, right? I wasn't comfortable with it at all, but I kept it buried in and I kept it in and I didn't say anything about it. But it was there, right? It was there. And that experience, along with just many other things, right? Seeing people be murdered in front of me, being around gangs and violence, being bullied, growing up in a community where everybody's living in poverty and lack. This was the daily norm. We normalize these things, right? And I once heard this, that kids are great listeners, but poor interpreters. I'm gonna say it again. Kids are great listeners, but poor interpreters, right? I heard everything. I seen everything that was happening around me, but I didn't have the language of wellness to even discuss it, to even address my pain, right? I didn't have the open door policy to be comfortable enough to be like, hey, look, this is bothering me. I don't know what's happening, but I don't like this, right? So I just kept it bottled in, as many of us do, as many of us do. And I lack the emotional fluency, right? I lack the emotional fluency. And all that is just a fancy word to say, when your emotions are telling you one thing, you know to make the best decisions that will serve you and serve others around you, where they're positively impacted by your decisions. So, for example, you're upset about something, right? You come in, you kick your toe on the side of the bed, and you're pissed off about it. And you live in that emotion. But when you have emotional fluency, you can go ahead and still positively do something to someone around you or say something to someone around you, right? You could have had a rough day. For me, had a long day. I come in the house, I'm stressed out. I don't want to talk. My fiance comes in, and then I automatically get angry with her because I'm angry about something that happened earlier. But if I have the right emotional fluency, right, I understand my emotions and my wellness and my mental, I can come in, even though I had that rough day, and I can put that thing away. And I can come in with gratitude, with peace, with love. And that's game changing, y'all. That's game changing. So many people out here in my community, in Atlantic City, we have had, unfortunately, a tremendous amount of, I would say, teen killings, where teens are literally killing each other. It's all retaliation, right? All retaliation. If you have the proper emotional fluency and understanding of your emotions to where you don't allow them to drive your car. Remember, we talked about that earlier. The emotions driving your car, and you have that proper mindset. What happens then? Okay, you killed this individual on my side. Look, I'm not going to retaliate by trying to harm you in that way. I'm going to find a better way to get a solution, right? But no, it just continues, it continues, it continues because no one's never sat them down to have those conversations, to tell them how to properly move when they are feeling upset, angry, mad, right? These are the skills that we need, along with the other things, right? You know, you go in school, they want to teach you math, language, history. All of these things are super important. But if you're not mentally there, emotionally, if you're not there, it almost doesn't even matter because it's going in one ear out the other. But when you're mentally healthy in the right place, you can thrive and you will thrive as a student. And for me, I had to learn through years of trials, years, I'm talking years, y'all, years of trials, years of adversities on how to address my emotions and make wise decisions, right? In 2004, I was graduating eighth grade, 2004. It's a graduation, it's a celebration, right? We've all graduated before. And my family celebrating with us, and my dad pulls me to the side at the graduation and he says this. He says, hey, look, I want to tell you something. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm thinking he's talking about he got me a gift or something like that. He says, look, some of your friends are going to die. Some of the girls are going to be pregnant. Some of your friends are going to drop out. Some are going to prison. And I was like, that's heavy. You know what I'm saying? That's heavy for somebody that just graduated eighth grade going into their freshman year of high school. And in his mind, I assumed that he was trying to prepare me for the reality of what was coming. But where he messed up at was this. He didn't provide me with the understanding and the emotional tools to handle what was coming. But he was right. Those exact things happened. Literally, the day after our eighth grade graduation, a friend of mine who I graduated with was shot in the head. The day after was shot in the head. He ended up surviving for about a year and then he ended up getting killed our freshman year of high school. Shortly after that, some of the girls that I went to school with, some of the cheerleaders began to get pregnant, started to have babies. A few of my friends dropped out, like after sophomore year. Another one of my close friends who's in prison still to this day got locked up when we were in high school. this was the reality that was around me. All of this chaos, all of this trauma, but I don't have the tool belt to handle any of these things mentally. I've ran my entire life. I've used basketball as my scapegoat my entire life. Growing up in the neighborhood I grew up in, I was good at basketball. So that's where I focused all my energy. When I was stressed, went to basketball. When I was worried, went to basketball because I didn't know how to talk and communicate and express how and what I was feeling. So everything went into basketball. And I got really good at it, really good enough to get a full ride scholarship to play basketball in Memphis, Tennessee. And like I said earlier, I'm a first generation high school graduate. So my parents, my mom, and my dad didn't graduate high school. They went back, got their GEDs, but they had me when they were in high school. So they didn't graduate. I was the first one in the family to actually do that. Not only that, now I have a full ride basketball scholarship, which is huge for us, which is huge, already breaking generational curses. But life gets challenging after this point. And this is where the resilience kicks in, right? This is where all of this kicks in. After senior year, I graduate, the summer of senior year, graduating, I'm about to go down to Memphis, Tennessee in August to play basketball at the school called Lemoyne Owen College. Great school, Division II school. And about 2 weeks before I was supposed to go to school, I come home from playing ball. I get in the house and my grandpa's sitting on the couch holding his stomach, right? And I'm like, man, it's weird seeing him in that position because my grandpa was one of them real old school dudes, like with the polo shirt, with the khaki pants, with the creases, the chacletas on and the hat. And he's always working. Like he's that kind of old guy. Like he's fixing a car, he's cutting the lawn, he's doing something, he's breaking stuff so he can put it back together. Like he's always working. So I'm seeing him in this position. And to me, he's like Superman. So I'm like, man, what's going on? I go to my brother, I'm like, yo, Josh, what's going on with Pop Up? He's been like, what's going on with him? I just got here. He looked like he's in a lot of pain and agony. Maybe we should take him to the hospital. Now, again, I told you earlier, he's real old school. He's not trying to go to the doctors, the hospital. He's not trying to get checkups, none of that, which is the issue. We really need to start doing more of that. Like that's super important for us, right? Especially as young men and young women, we need to start getting those checkups and being very diligent about our health. But back to the story, we end up literally picking my grandpa up and taking him to the hospital, right? Now, I played basketball my entire life. I just had started really lifting weights as I was preparing for college. My brother, who's a few years younger to me, he played high school football at this powerhouse football school. So he's kind of stocky himself. I'm like, look, bro, let's go ahead and grab Pop Up. Let's put him in the car and let's ride off, right? Let's just throw him in there. Let's ride off. He can't beat both of us. You know what I'm saying? So we literally pick him up, put him in there, shoot to the emergency room. We get to the emergency room. I start calling everybody. I call my dad, my aunts, my mom, letting them all know that we're here at the emergency room. So I'm thinking it's a normal routine thing. They're going to give him some antibiotics. They're going to tell us, he got a little gas, something going on. He'll be fine. He'll be home, in a day or so. The doctor comes out. Is this the Evans family? This is us. What's going on? I have some news that I want to tell you. Some bad news. Bad news. Okay, look, what is it? Robert has gangrene, right? And for those of you that don't know what gangrene is, it's a bacterial infection that pretty much eats away at your tissues in your body and your muscle. And for him, it was very severe and it was eating away at his intestines, literally eating away at his intestines in his stomach. That's why he was holding his stomach so tight. That stuff was eating away at his intestines. So I'm like, all right, in my mind, I'm still naive. I'm still not understanding. All right, what can we do? What can you get him? No, you don't understand. This is inevitable. He's going to die. There's nothing we can do to stop this. There's nothing we can do to stop this. And unfortunately, that would be the last time I would see my Pop in that hospital with tubes in his mouth, his eyes really glassy yellow. And that would be the last time I would literally see him would be in that hospital. And I share this story because for someone who grew up in trauma, for someone who grew up with a lack of self-worth, who grew up anxious, who grew up worried, who always bottled up their emotions, this was like the tipping point for me. Literally, this was like the tipping point for me because my Pop, we were so close. We were like this. Like, how many of y'all got a family member where y'all tight like that? Like, that was my Pop. And that would be the last time I would see him. And at this point, I'm 18 years old. And I'm about to head off to school. And he wanted me to go to college. He didn't have past a third grade education. He was so hype about me going to college. He was in the neighborhood telling all his boys, oh, my grandson going off to college. He was going to drive me down from New Jersey to Memphis, Tennessee, which is like 15 hours or something. That's how excited he was for me to go off to college. And that would be the last time I would see him. And I use the analogy of a soda bottle, right? Say if you have a Sprite bottle, you shaking that thing up, you shaking it up, you shaking it up, you shaking it up. What happens when you twist the top a little bit? It explodes, literally explodes. And I had started to get to that point mentally. I ended up going down to Memphis, Tennessee late, still going to school. I caught a flight, my first flight ever, my first time really out on my own, get down to school, and I automatically go into like party mode, trying to mask the pain. Because again, I don't have the language to express how I feel. I don't have the language to express my trauma. So I try to mask the pain. Down there partying, drinking, wilding out the whole first semester. And it gets to a point where I'm starting to have these anxiety attacks like every day. I'm in a deep depression almost every day. And after the first semester, I ended up leaving. I went and told the coach, I said, Coach, look, I can't do this. I got to go. Mind you, I'm on a full ride scholarship, y'all. How many people will want a full ride scholarship? I'm on a full ride scholarship and I ended up leaving school, ended up coming back home, forfeiting the whole thing, right? I got home, I worked a little bit. I went to a tournament up in North Jersey called the EKB. I don't know if they still have this tournament, but it was a great basketball tournament. I ended up going up there, playing ball. And guess what, y'all? I got another scholarship. That's two. I got a second scholarship to play ball. Second scholarship. I ended up going to New Mexico to a school out there called New Mexico Military Institute, a Division I junior college, to play ball to get myself back on track. But remember what I said earlier, everywhere you go, there you are. Everywhere you go, there you are. It didn't matter that I went to the other side of the country. None of that mattered. Because again, everywhere you go, there you are. So I ended up getting to New Mexico. I was there for about a year. And guess what happened? Anybody? Guess what happened? I left after a year because the same thing that was happening in Memphis was happening in New Mexico. But I didn't want to address, I don't like confrontation, right? I'm one of those individuals. I don't like to address certain problems. I didn't like getting uncomfortable. So I would just ignore it. Again, I would use basketball as that scapegoat, y'all. But my mental health was suffering. I left New Mexico, ended up coming back to Jersey. Took a few community college classes, shot up to North Jersey now. Now I'm at Caldwell University. It was Caldwell College at the time. I went out there. I'm like, look, I'm going to play ball. I'm getting things back on track. I'm going to figure this thing out. Playing ball for a year and a half. Guess what happened? It's a repeating cycle. I left. The same thing, y'all. Those issues, those things that are pressing on you, they won't leave until you address them. You can switch your zip code as much as you want. You can switch your environments as much as you want. But this is an internal work that you have to do, that we have to do. But I didn't understand that at the time, y'all. I kept running. Ended up back home working. This time I'm really stressed because throughout high school, I was, most likely to succeed. Basketball all-star player, prom king, Mr. '08. I was all these things. So I had high expectations. I assumed in my mind, I'm like, look, I'm going to be doing amazing things. I didn't think this would be the path. So I started to get discouraged. People who I graduated high school with that had went to college, they started graduating. They started graduating college while I'm still in this journey. And now I'm getting really depressed and I'm getting in a dark spot. And I remember I had gotten such a dark spot around this time because one of my close friends had committed suicide. Another one of my best friends had went to prison on a gun charge. And I remember being in my room in the dark, dark, dark place. And I started to think like, it'd be better if I wasn't here. And that was the first time ever in my life where I started to have like suicidal ideations. And I was like, it'd be better if I wasn't here. But that's not the truth. That's never the reality, y'all. Whose life is actually going to be better if you take your own? That's never the truth. That's never the case. And by the grace of God, I'm still here. And also by the grace of God, I had amazing friends. One of my boys, he's in the Air Force now. His name's Tony Chapman. He literally came to my house, forced me to go to the gym with him because he seen that something was off. He was like, yo, I know something's off with Nate. So he started forcing me to go to the gym with him, right? So I'm going to the gym. We're going to the gym. We're training. He introduces me to two other men that look like me. Dudes just swole, tattoos, beards. And I'm like, okay. So we're working out, we're training. But what we would do is this. This is where the change started to happen in my mind, where I started to think about, okay, this wellness thing is really important. This isn't any just rah-rah stuff. This isn't no hocus pocus, whatever, whatever. This is really important stuff that I need to focus on. And that happened at the gym. We would sit in the locker room for about 20 to 30, sometimes even 40, 45 minutes. We would sit in there and we would talk, right? Amongst each other as men. But we wasn't talking about sports. We wasn't talking about women. We weren't talking about sex. We weren't talking about any of these things. We were literally having conversations about growth, about life, about transparency, about the things we needed to be vulnerable about the situations we were going through. And it blew my mind, y'all. It blew my mind. It blew my mind because I remember sitting in the locker room and I'm hearing these guys talk. These are guys that are older than me, right? I'm hearing these guys talk. And I'm like, where am I at right now? Because my environment didn't display this, right? In my environment that I grew up in, I didn't see this. I didn't hear this, especially not from men, especially not from Black men. I definitely didn't hear this kind of conversation happening. And what it did was it freed my mind. It allowed me to be comfortable. I started to be more transparent. I started to be vulnerable. I started to be more open. And what happened in that gym, it started to pour over into my life outside of the gym, right? It started to pour over into the things that I was doing outside of the gym, and people started to notice the change in me. So physically, I wasn't just getting stronger and bigger and all those things, but mentally, my mind was going to a whole nother level, y'all. So from there, got back in school, went to a community college, ended up going to ACCC, playing basketball, and it was great. But at the same time, schools wanted to recruit me, but I've been out of high school for quite a few years now. So I got a car, I got a cell phone, I got all these different things going on. So I can't necessarily play for free anymore. I can't play for free. Like I need to make money. So I literally forfeit all of my eligibility to play basketball. I shoot over to Las Vegas to an overseas tryout for a week. I'm like, look, I'm gonna make this thing happen. I'm gonna make this thing happen. So I go out there, I play amazing. I get back home and I'm like, okay, I know some agents are gonna call me. I know they're gonna reach out to me now, right? This is my shot, this is my opportunity. I never had to address those traumas and those issues. I can just keep running, I can keep doing my thing. Basketball finally paid off. About a week goes by, nothing. About 2 weeks, nothing. About a month goes by, no phone calls, no emails, nothing, y'all. I'm telling you, absolutely nothing. And I begin to get discouraged. I begin to, those feelings that I had when I was younger that I told you about, of feeling unworthy, of feeling less than, they started to creep up on me as a grown man again, right? And an agent had reached out to me via email, and I'm like, okay, this is it. They want to pick me up for this team overseas. They send this contract through. And now I'm blessed to have people in my life who have played professional sports and professional basketball. So I get the contract. I show them. I'm like, hey, can you check this over? Make sure the money's right. My housing's right. Everything like that. They're looking through the contract. They get to the end of the contract. And here's what happened. There's a clause at the end of the contract that says, send us 2,500 for this to be, solidified. That doesn't sound right. If you want me, why am I paying you? Long story short, there was someone hacking into the system of the overseas tryouts, trying to scam players out their money. So imagine how I feel now, y'all. Someone who grew up that was molested as a kid, that grew up around violence, that grew up around trauma, who had all of these different issues going on. I had lost my grandfather. I lost my friends. I'm battling with depression. I'm battling with anxiety. I'm battling with suicidal thoughts. And now the one thing that I used as a scapegoat, y'all, I almost feel like I feel so unworthy in that moment. Like I'm not even good enough for an agent to reach out to me. I got to get scammed. And that really started to play into my psyche. So I started to hit that depression again, y'all. And I remember I'm home playing basketball at my local rec center. I go up for a move. Somebody undercuts me. I twist my ankle. Now, I'm bow-legged and pigeon-toed. So I used to twist my ankle a lot. So I was really good at rehabbing it. But this time was a little different. I remember sitting on my bed and I'm rubbing a pen across the bottom of my foot and I have no feeling in my foot. So like any sane person would do, I freak out. I freak out. And we go to the hospital, and the doctor tells me that I have torn a bunch of ligaments in my ankle and I have to be in the boot for several weeks. Now, listen to the storyline. For someone who is used to running from their problems, right? Who used basketball as a scapegoat, who doesn't have the language of emotional wellness or emotional fluency, who battles from mental health issues on a regular. One of the most challenging things that happens is for that individual to have to be in a place where they can't be as active as they once were. So for me, I couldn't go play ball. I had this boot on. I couldn't run around. I couldn't do all those things to take my mind off of the traumas that I was dealing with. This was one of the first times where I had to literally sit with my thoughts and listen to how I was talking to myself, right? Those thoughts that you hear in your mind, that's you talking to you. Literally. I had to check myself. Like, yo, Nate, why are you talking to yourself like this? Why do you feel unworthy? Why are you doubting yourself? Why are you downplaying yourself? Where are all these insecurities coming from? And that was the first time I really sat with that thing, y'all. And I made a decision right there that this has to change. This has to change. I'm going to choose wellness. I'm going to choose myself. I'm going to get the help I need despite the circumstances, right? Despite the stigmas. I know what pain feels like. I know what it feels like, but I don't know what the other side feels like. And I want to try that, right? Imagine you're climbing a rope. You're climbing the rope in the gym class, right, to the ceiling. You let go, what's going to happen? You're hitting the floor. And you know that for a fact. If I let go, I'm hitting the floor. It's inevitable. But I don't know what happens if I keep climbing. I don't know. I might reach the top. I might be able to ring that bell. But if I let go and I quit, I'm hitting the floor. And that's a fact. And that's what I knew about negative thinking. It works. I lived my whole life in that space. I know what depression feels like. I know what anxiety feels like. But I didn't know what that other side of healing felt like. And I got tired of running, y'all. I got tired of running. I got myself back in school at this time, finished up school, went back to Rowan University, ended up getting my bachelor's degree, locking in with that, focusing on that. And then I started to go to therapy to get the help that I needed. And then I also had made the decision during that time. I was like, look, I'm going to really fix and enhance everything that's wellness around me, from my spirit to my mind to my finances to everything. So I really started to dedicate myself to that, right? Got a therapist. So I'm focusing on my mind and my emotions. I'm in the gym, getting my mind and getting my tempo and my body right. But then there was one last part. I'm like, I gotta get my spirit right, yo. My spirit just isn't right. So I had made a decision to get baptized. And funny story, I'm finishing up my semester at Rowan. I'm driving home, and my church calls me and they're like, "Hey Nate, we're having baptism this Sunday. I see your name's on the list. Will you be available for the 10:30 service?" And I'm like, uh, this don't feel like the right time, right? I feel like I need to be more prepared. And it hit me in that moment, y'all. And I want you to catch this. If you ain't catch nothing else, I want you to catch this, right? It hit me in that moment when I had that thought in my mind, like, oh, this isn't the right time. I got to wait till it's the right time. I realized that the fact that I had that thought meant that it was the right time to go ahead and get my spirit right. It was the right time to go ahead and get my mind right. It was the right time to go ahead and make the better decisions for my life, right? We always try to wait until it's the right time, until it's the perfect time. And that's not reality, y'all. Right now is the right time. The fact that you're a part of this conference means that it's the right time. It means that you're serious about enhancing and changing and empowering yourself, right? It means that you're serious about your growth. You're serious about your mental and emotional wellness. The fact that you're in this room, you're seeking to grow. And from there, I made that decision in that moment, like, yo, I'm not going to run no more. Again, I know what that pain feels like. I know what that trauma feels like. And I'm no longer going to live in that. So I made that decision, got baptized, started going to therapy, graduated my degree, started my business, started writing books, wrote a bestseller. Like, things started to fall in place when I started to choose me and I started to choose wellness. And here's the best part of the whole thing. My dad and my brother both reached out to me a few months ago asking about therapy, asking about getting the help that they need. And I truly believe this, y'all. I truly believe this. And I'm closing out. I truly believe this. that would not have happened if I didn't seek wellness for myself. It's almost as if I gave them permission, not that they needed it, but I almost gave them permission. It's like when I was in that locker room, when those guys started talking about things and they were vulnerable and they were transparent, they were talking about their issues and they were being open about it. That gave me permission to open up and get the healing that I needed. So the fact that I stepped up and decided, like, I'm no longer living in this pain and this trauma, I'm breaking these generational curses, I'm looking for healing on the other side. I have now encouraged and inspired my dad, who was the last person I thought ever was going to go to therapy. I'm gonna be honest, to get the help he needed. But I inspired and encouraged him to go get that help and that healing. My brother, who's been going through so many things throughout the years, to go get that help and that healing. And then I was able to have real transparent conversations with both of them that we've never had before. My dad in particular, he told me, like, look, I was raised this way. You know, your papa never said he loved me, ever. My dad's 50 and he never heard I love you. And now he hears it from me every day. Like, those things don't happen if I don't choose myself and if I don't choose wellness. And I want to encourage everybody that's on here that's listening, man. It's super, super important. Choose wellness, choose yourself, choose healing, because there's people around you who are waiting for you to make that move. And you're going to encourage somebody else. They may never say it to you, but you're going to inspire somebody else to get the healing and the help that they need. And it's so much better on the other side, y'all. Remember, your story is about you, but it's not for you. My story, right? 9 different schools from first grade to high school, 5 different colleges, suicidal ideations, dropping out everywhere I went, battling with depression and anxiety. Yeah, it's about me. But it's not for me. It's for somebody else, y'all. And I use that story every single day when I'm in these schools, every single day when I'm in these nonprofits. And now I get to use my story to inspire and encourage, all because I sought out to get the healing that I needed. So that's my time. I thank y'all. If you have any questions, we got like, I think like 2 or 3 minutes here. So you can definitely throw them in the chat or you can jump off the chat. It's up to you. But I appreciate just your attention. And I pray that you gathered something from this conversation. And I pray that something I said really sparked something in you for you to choose yourself and prioritize yourself. Because when I talk to people, something I hear a lot, especially with parents, and sometimes students as well, when I ask them, like, you know, what's your priorities? It's always like, oh, my mom's my priority or my kid's my priority. And that's cute. I like it. It's cute. You know what I'm saying? But the reality is you need to be your priority, because when you focus on you, everybody and everything around you gets better. So really, really focus on your mental and emotional wellness, y'all, especially as we gear up for this school year. It's new territory that we've never been in, right? But you were made for such a time just as this. So thank y'all. That's my time. And I appreciate all of you, my brother Seneca, and I love you all. And thank you.